I want you to picture a place that, honestly, geographically speaking, it just shouldn't work. It is a total contradiction.
Right. It really is.
Yeah, you're standing there on the edge of this massive, glittering bay, the Mediterranean at its absolutely most beautiful. But then if you turn around, you are staring right down the throat of an active volcano.
It's intense.
It is. You've got fire and water constantly pushing against each other. And right in the middle of that, trapped between the magma and the sea, is this dense, loud, almost chaotic city. We are talking about Naples, Italy.
And it's a city that literally lives on the edge of disaster.
Yeah.
Because of that environment, it has developed this incredibly specific, intense personality over the centuries.
Which is exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to this deep dive.
Glad to be here for it. We're not just looking at a pretty vacation spot where you go to eat some carbs and watch the sunset. For this deep dive, we are pulling from a really fascinating walking tour script and some architectural analyses that peel back the layers of the city.
Right. The mission here is to understand Naples as a masterclass in survival.
Exactly. It is 2,500 years of pure power packed into one place. The sources argue that Naples survives by absorbing history rather than resisting it.
And what struck me right away in the material is how they describe the architecture. Because we usually think of old buildings as just scenery, right? Just a nice background.
Static history, yeah.
But the sources frame it as a physical struggle for control. The buildings are active. They are watching you.
That is the core concept we really need to unpack today, this idea of power as a physical thing. In our modern world, we tend to think of power as abstract, a bank transfer or a digital law. But in Naples, power is heavy. It's carved right into the volcanic stone.
To intimidate people.
Pure intimidation. The city was designed to watch and control its own citizens.
Which brings us to the star-shaped fortress, which I am so excited to talk about.
We will definitely get to the fortress. But to understand that control, we actually have to go all the way back to the foundation. Because underneath all the Vespas and the chaotic alleys, the original map of Naples is Greek.
Which feels weird to say about an Italian city.
It does. We naturally think of Rome when we think of Italy. But Greek settlers founded this place in the 5th century BCE. They called it Neapolis, meaning the new city.
And they didn't just build a random fishing village.
No, they laid down a highly organized grid.
The sources specifically mention these perfectly straight streets and public squares.
Right, and theaters. It was a culture entirely rooted in debate and philosophy. They built the physical space to reflect those ideals.
But here's the thing that I found really fascinating. Rome eventually conquered it, obviously.
As they did with everything.
Right, but the sources point out this amazing pattern. Even after the Romans took over, Naples somehow remained Greek in its language and its culture for centuries.
That is the absorption strategy in action. Rome was obsessed with cultural dominance. They usually paved over everything.
But they didn't do that here.
No, Naples just sort of absorbed them. The source material emphasizes this as the city's earliest lesson. You do not resist history, you absorb it. You let it layer on top of you.
So they basically kept their Greek identity while technically being Roman.
Exactly. They became the cultural and philosophical getaway for the Roman elite without losing themselves.
That is such a smart survival tactic. But as we move forward in the timeline, the sources show that things get a lot less philosophical and a lot more brutal.
The layers definitely get heavier. By the time we hit the 1500s, Naples is under Spanish rule.
And this is where the physical power really takes over. The script describes looking up from the street and just seeing Castel Sant'Elmo dominating the sky. It is this massive fortress carved straight out of the volcanic hill.
And its shape is what makes it so revolutionary. It is a six-pointed star.
Which wasn't just them trying to make it look pretty from above.
Not at all. That star shape was cutting-edge military strategy. Before the 1500s, castles had tall, flat walls. But then cannons became a factor on the battlefield.
And a cannonball against a flat wall is just going to shatter it.
Exactly. So the Spanish engineers gave the walls a slope to deflect the cannonballs. But those 6 angular bastions, the points of the star, those were designed for deadly crossfire.
It creates this geometry where there are no blind spots.
Precisely. If you try to attack one wall, the defenders on the point next to you can fire right into your flank. It is a machine built to watch and destroy.
But the really wild part is who they were watching. Because it wasn't just looking out at the sea for invaders.
No, it was looking inward. The sources highlight this crucial relationship between Castel Sant'Elmo and Via Toledo.
Which is this grand avenue that was carved out in 1536 by the viceroy, Don Pedro de Toledo.
Right. It is incredibly long and straight. And you have to ask yourself why a military occupier would build a wide, perfectly straight street through the middle of a city that might rebel.
It's urban control by design.
Completely. The fortress was positioned to look directly down that street.
So the fortress watched, and the street obeyed.
That's the dynamic. You didn't need soldiers everywhere if the people knew that a cannon up on the hill had a clear line of sight right down their main avenue.
It's a terrifying way to live. But then we get to 1587, and we see what happens when you pack a volcano, a fortress, and a ton of gunpowder into one place.
The explosion. This is a defining moment for the city's resilience.
The narrative in the source is just so dramatic. It's a story night in 1587, and a lightning bolt strikes the gunpowder stores inside San Telmo.
And we're talking about the main munitions dump for a major Spanish stronghold. The explosion literally shattered the sky.
The description is wild. Massive chunks of volcanic stone raining down on the city below. People were panicking in the streets.
Because they thought the volcano had finally erupted.
Right, they thought Vesuvius was going off, but it was actually their own fortress blowing up.
But look at the aftermath. Did the Spanish abandon the hill?
No, they just rebuilt it even stronger.
Which perfectly captures the identity of Naples that the sources talk about. The city burns and it rebuilds, always. It has an incredible tolerance for catastrophe.
And they really needed that tolerance when we skip ahead to 1799. This is where the tension between the street and the fortress actually snaps.
The clash between the Republic and the monarchy. Revolutionary ideas were sweeping across Europe at this point, mostly coming down from France.
So Naples declares itself a republic. They want to overthrow the Bourbon dynasty, who are of Spanish origin, but the Bourbons refuse to just surrender and walk away.
And this is where power as a physical reality becomes painfully clear. It wasn't a debate. It was a physical battle.
The walking tour script puts you right in the middle of it. It describes the cannons thundering from San Telmo, just pounding the city, smoke filling the Spanish Quarter.
You had the revolutionaries trying desperately to seize the fortress, and the Bourbon forces defending it with ruthless precision.
It's just devastating. The sources say the Republic collapsed pretty quickly after that. The Bourbons came back, and the executions followed.
It is a dark chapter. But the analytical takeaway from our sources is that in Naples, power is never abstract. It is loud. It is carved in stone.
The stone always wins against the idea.
In the short term, yes, the fortress held.
But then the tone shifts completely. After all this war and violence, the Bourbon rulers decide to totally change their strategy.
They realize you can't just rule through fear forever. You need spectacle. Under the Bourbons, power becomes beauty.
And they went all out. The monuments they built are just staggering.
They really are. They built the Teatro di San Carlo.
Which the source notes is Europe's oldest continuously active opera house.
Exactly. And they expanded the Palazzo Reale and created this massive open space, the Piazza del Plebiscito.
Don't forget the Basilica di San Francesco di Paola.
Right. The architecture shifted from being purely military to being theatrical. Authority became a ceremony. They wanted to awe the citizens into submission instead of just threatening them.
Look at this beautiful opera house. Please ignore the cannons.
Precisely. Because even with all that grandeur, San Telmo was still up there on the hill. It never stopped watching.
It's such a heavy atmosphere, but what I love about this deep dive is that the tour doesn't just keep us looking up at the castles. It brings us right down to street level.
Down to Via Santa Brigida. This is where you really see the concept of stacking history.
Yeah, Spanish Baroque buildings sitting right next to modern Naples. They just layer the centuries without erasing anything.
And you can't talk about the survival of the street level without talking about the food.
Oh, absolutely. This was my favorite part of the script. The pivot to Antica Pizzeria Port Alba.
Sitting right there near the ancient city gates.
It's one of the oldest pizzerias in the entire world. And the menu they describe, it's not fancy dining.
Far from it. This is the food of the people.
They talk about the folded pizza wrapped up in paper so you can eat it on the go, fried pasta, potato croquettes, and it's all under €5.
Think about the cultural significance of that. We just spent all this time talking about empires and fortresses and cannon.
And lightning explosions.
Right. But while the empires are fighting for control of the skyline, the common people are figuring out how to survive on the street.
Empires collapse, pizza survives. That quote from the source is just perfect.
It highlights the ultimate resilience of the Neapolitans. The Spanish brought the tomatoes, the Bourbons built the palaces, but the people of Naples took those ingredients and made something that outlasted all of them.
Okay, so we've covered the fortress, the fire, the streets, but to really finish this picture, the tour takes us out to the water, down to the Lungomare Caracciolo.
For the waterfront. The whole atmosphere changes down there. You have the salt in the air, the breeze off the bay,
And of course, another castle, Castel dell'Ovo.
the Castle of the Egg. This is actually the oldest fortress in Naples.
And visually, it's just this massive mashup of history. The sources say it has Greek foundations, Norman walls, and Bourbon cannons all stacked on top of each other.
It's the entire history of the city in one building. But the most important part of Castel dell'Ovo isn't the stone, it's the legend.
The story of the Roman poet Virgil.
Yes. The legend says that Virgil was also a sorcerer, and he hid a magical egg deep in the foundations of the castle.
And the stakes of this are incredibly high. The myth says that if the egg ever breaks, the castle falls, and Naples is completely destroyed.
It sounds like a fairy tale.
It does, but the reality is, despite everything we've talked about, the wars, the lightning, the volcanic threats, the city has never actually fallen.
It has been conquered, it has been absorbed, but it has never been wiped off the map.
So they hold on to this myth of the egg as a kind of psychological anchor.
Exactly. When you live between the fire and the sea, you need a story to explain why you are still standing.
Which brings us to how all of this connects to today, because Naples isn't just a museum.
No, it is a massive, thriving, modern hub, and the source material makes a really sharp connection here. Look at the Porto di Napoli.
The port is still this huge gateway. You've got ships heading out to Capri, Ischia, Sicily, and all across the wider Mediterranean.
Naples has always faced outward. It has always been about trade, war, and opportunity coming in from the sea.
And the sources point out that the modern equivalents of those old cannon-lined routes are still there.
Right, the Aeroporto di Napoli Capodichino.
And the high-speed trains running out of Napoli Centrale.
The technology has changed. We use planes and fast trains instead of galleons and Spanish roads. But the strategic importance of the city is exactly the same as it was 2,000 years ago.
It's still the center of the board.
It is. So if we synthesize this whole journey, it's truly remarkable. We started with the Greek Neapolis, the new city of debate and order.
Then we moved up to the Spanish Star Fortress, watching over the streets with cannons.
Down to the Bourbon Opera House, where power became a performance.
And finally to the street-side pizza and the magical egg keeping it all together.
It all comes back to that core idea. Naples absorbs. It layers history instead of erasing it.
Reading through this deep dive really changed how I view cities. Naples isn't just a backdrop where things happen. It is this living, breathing entity that actively participates in its own history.
It fights back.
It really does. And the source material leaves us with this incredible, somewhat provocative thought that I want to pass on to you listening.
It's a great question to reflect on.
In a world where empires rise and fall and the landscape is constantly shifting, what is the magical egg in your own foundation? What is the hidden myth or belief that keeps your city, or even just you, standing when everything else is chaotic?
It makes you want to go out and really look up at the layers in your own hometown.
Definitely. So take a walk, look at the architecture around you, and see what stories it's trying to tell. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
We'll see you next time.